Today's episode is sponsored by Zola, the platform built with wedding pros for wedding pros. Zola believes in a better way to get in front of couples. Stay tuned to find out how they make it a reality. Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner with the Wedding Biz. Before I announce today's guest, I want to say that I'm back from almost a week in Colorado. I took my daughter to Boulder and then met her boyfriend and my wife in Colorado Springs. And all we did was hike and eat great food, and it was amazing, just so invigorating. And it was when I was driving home from the airport back in Maryland that it really hit me how good I feel when I'm in the mountains and how ramped up things generally are back in my home state. And I've talked about this before, how much I love being in the presence of nature and what it does for me, especially when I'm near the ocean or the mountains. And it was the great record producer Rick Rubin who said that, or pointed out that connecting with nature is connecting with yourself. And I totally agree with that. Anyway, if you missed last week's episode, it was a revisit of my original interview of Alex Fitzgibbons, managing director of Fait Accompli out of London, which plans and designs spectacular events, including for A-listers and royal weddings. If you missed last week's, you got to check it out. It was a really big interview. So today's guest is Christopher Confero. Christopher was named by the Knot founder as the Talk of the South and loves transforming spaces and designing editorial experiences. He was also recently named Best Wedding Planner in Atlanta by Jezebel Magazine and one of the top 30 designers in the country by Party Slate. Christopher is also the publisher and editor-in-chief of the magazine Alabama Weddings. Enjoy this conversation with Christopher Confero. Hey, Christopher, so good to have you on the show. Thanks for taking time today.
It is my pleasure. We've been trying to connect seemingly for years, and it finally worked out.
Yeah.
So happy to be here.
Yeah, it has. So I believe that your initial passions were as a musician, vocalist, and actor. Isn't that true? Did you want to be on Broadway? Is that what you were doing?
That's right. I remember being on stage from the from the early age of 3, 4 at my grandmother's church, and that kind of shaped my life to theater, show choir. I play the piano, so kind of a full-rounded creative. That's my background and how it kind of led me into events. Yeah.
Wow. How do you feel that passion helped you as a planner and a designer?
Well, I didn't make it big on Broadway, so events, they're more my creative expression now. I direct. My clients are the stars, the guests are the audience. In my opinion, the development of any special event should kind of mirror the arc of any movie you see or a good stage show. That arc of energy, the exposition, the rising action, all of those traditional senses. A live event should follow that arc, and that was instilled in me from a very the very early time of my career, and that's just me sort of spitballing it. But events it's just simple live theater. It's casting, costuming, staging, lights, props, well planning, blocking, and choreography. If you're seated for a really good movie or stage show, you're completely transported to a new place. So I want to take guests on that journey, so they forget what's waiting for them at home and back in the real world. Let go, let loose. If the atmosphere is thick with love and magic and music, and you dance the night away, that's a show that I would want to see. Would I want to sit at that table? Would I want to be at that party? Hopefully get a good score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, I love that. Well, when did you first feel the passion for doing event design? How did that manifest?
It was really the crossroads of public relations. I was a PR marketing major at Auburn, and then sort of the crossroads of PR marketing and theater and just that sort of performing arts sort of led to special events. I did freelance graphic design for the bridal magazine that I actually own now, which graphic design turned into editorial styling, which turned into sort of friends and clients asking, could I do that for them in real life? I never set out to be a wedding planner. It was all I wanted to do corporate PR, sort of product branding through the launch, and then just rinse and repeat. So it was always fresh. I, again, never intended to be a wedding planner, but that sort of the juxtaposition of the Southern gay wedding planner, the shtick of it all, like it really worked. And starting when you're 23, I was, if not this, a little younger, often the same age as the brides, and so the parents, I was just one of the kids, and I don't know, it worked.
Yeah. Well, I wanna read a quote that I found. I don't know if it was in an interview or in your website, but you said that never are two parties alike. There's no recipe for every event, but there are certain finishes that define a Confero production. So I wonder, Christopher, how would you describe your personal signature? I mean, what is it that does define your kind of a production? What makes you you?
I always articulate that I am no different than any other planner or designer. We all keep timelines. We all, manage production. I think that the star quality and what makes us all successful is our ability to create, rather to connect with certain individuals. I, people ask, who's your biggest competition in your market? And I say, well, I don't really have competition because my clients are going to come to me and connect with me. And, some of my colleagues, their clients will do the same for them. So all of my napkins will be hand pressed for a dinner. All of the chairs are edged. And, I have a way, being a theater kid, that I approach lighting and that I approach the choreography of the night. But when it comes down to what I feel where the magic really happens, it's just my ability to connect with a certain person. It's the sweet and southern belle who wants the blush and bashful southern traditional wedding. Like, those aren't my girls. My girls want to be a little sexy, and they want to be a little nouveau riche. And as the line in the movie says, it's the riche that that counts. So, it's just those kind of more theatrical girls who really want an experience. That's who I connect with, and that's kind of where my secret sauce lies.
Well, do you have a particular way, a process of how you connect, with your couples? Is there a particular, I don't want to call it a formula necessarily, but like, what is your way of doing that?
For me, a wedding is couple specific. It should always reflect how those people entertain their friends and their family at home, but elevated to my finishes. So in the beginning stage, it's my job to ask the right questions, to hear what I need. I need to learn who they are, how they travel, where they shop, what does a date night look like. Even if someone has a creative bend, they may not be able to articulate who they are or what they want for their wedding. So my process is just literally opening up conversation to give them the room to feel relaxed and confident. My grandfather, a thing I took away from my childhood and just those sort of parental things, is you meet people where they are. How do you communicate? How do they receive information? Again, listening is my most important job, but not the conversation not feeling trite or forced. Because I'm the one taking the calls. I receive the emails. I have a very lean team, but I still believe in making that first point of contact, it being conversational. I don't have, I have my internal processes, the way we do business, but when it comes to like a template formula, perhaps for an email response, I don't use one. I read how they are phrasing their inquiry. Are they excited? How are they punctuating? Are they using emojis? I just meet people where they are, because throughout the process, the relationship really needs to develop naturally. If we're spending 12 months or more planning a wedding, we have to get along on and off the clock, because I'm not only planner and designer. I'm a producer, I'm a banker, I'm a therapist, I'm a firefighter, I'm a scapegoat, sounding board, mediator.
Therapist.
We wear all of those, not just the planners, even as band leader. How often are you catching the emotion of another part of the planning process, and you have to kind of cover it in your process? So 100%, it's just relational. My process is relational. You meet people where they are and just make sure they feel comfortable and open enough to communicate.
I also want to dig into the creative part of this. What you're talking about, I believe, is also creative. But as far as, for the design, like in your website, you describe your philosophy and you say the core of creativity is imagination. We must allow ourselves to look at our surroundings with a fresh eye and detect new in the old, the unfamiliar in the familiar. If we are able to combine explicitly different elements into a clear new sensibility, then we have successfully realized our calling. But there has to be a cohesive and logical approach, or it's just nonsense. I would love to hear more behind that.
Those are some big, pretty lofty words, right?
Yeah.
Listen, we've seen it all. We all start with the same ballrooms, the same frame tents, but it's our job as creatives to see things through a new lens for every project we take on. We work with the same flowers, the same lights, textiles. We've all used that chic, whitewashed bentwood guest chair. We use the same things, but we must combine those different elements to bring life to the love story of our clients. Like, that's our calling, to be a storyteller. It's just truly how my brain works. After standing in a space for a few minutes, Andy, I can close my eyes and see the entire build out fully finished. I know what the photos are going to look like. It's what I call the innocence of imagination. It's the childlike ability to just play. And although I'm a stickler for the details and things being done in excellence, at the end of the day, I'm just playing. We're crafting that bespoke experience for our clients and their guests. And although it really has to be at the crossroads of function and form, the cohesive and the logical, you can't put some abstract concept that no one will understand and call it design. That's the nonsense. It needs to be relatable and tangible and have a flow to it.
Yeah. Well, can you give me some examples, like maybe some stories from a couple of your favorite wedding events of meeting the clients and, what it is that you sensed from them, and then what when you get that vision of what the room is like? Can you give some specifics?
I had a client in Boston last year. I met them through a project that I had produced in Atlanta. They attended the wedding, loved the wedding so much, they took me to Boston. I was happy to go and produce for them there. But our first site visit, they had picked me up and we were driving around, and the groom's truck was blue and the interior was a bright orange, which for a vehicle selection, like that's a bold color choice. And so I was like, I just dig in, ask the right questions and give them the room to answer. And he had waited so long to find that color combination of that truck. He had ordered it and and I was like, well, bride, if you're okay with it, like, I feel like this is our wedding color story. And she was like, I would have never. They're both academics. Like, they're just not, again, that creative expression they just didn't have. So who can say they took the color story from the groom's truck? And listen, orange and blue, it's my college alma mater, Auburn. So like, I had a personal dig there. I loved it. I loved producing in that color story. But it ended up being super modern. They let me kind of just run with it. We were on the top floor of this beautiful high rise in Boston, looking over the harbor, which is just a wall of windows. And I literally walked in, and I always stop the site manager, whoever's taking us on the tour, and I say, at the end, if I have questions, then tell me how you usually flow. I said, let me just come in with fresh eyes and kind of play. And we set up a few of the rooms like no one had ever dressed them before. And then those wild color stories and color blocking, we just, I went in and kind of just made it my own. The client trusted me to take their very clean, modern, simplistic, chic personal style and bring that to life.
Yeah. Zola initially revolutionized registries and wedding websites, but did you know that they're now changing the game for wedding pros too? That's because Zola is a different kind of platform, one built for how you work today. Create free listings tailored to your services that make your business look great, and there's no subscription required. Connecting with couples has never been easier. Zola vets all leads to bring you real couples who are a great fit for you in terms of your fee, your expertise, and your style. So gain control and grow your business with transparent, pay-to-connect pricing. Create your free listing and get your first few connections for free at zola.com/Andy. That's ZOLA.com/Andy. What about the challenges in doing these weddings and various other events? Like what is one of the biggest challenges that you've ever faced in your career, and how did you deal with it? How did you overcome it?
Isn't it always the weather?
That's a big one.
Knock on wood, I've never really, whether it's social media or just word of mouth, you hear clients saying, oh my gosh, we had this problem or that problem. And I swear, like, it's 99% the weather. If we've planned, like, what can go other than something not showing up, like, it's always the weather. I had a project a little bit outside of Nashville in a community called Spring Hill that the family had taken on a mountain of a task and built these world-class stables and paddocks and literally a family chapel that would serve as the backdrop to the ceremony. So, when you're doing construction, the ground's a little soft. Nothing has really had time to settle throughout 2020 and 2021. Everything was slow. So we were months behind. And the week of the wedding, we had a gully washer of a flood storm come in. And I'm still very hands-on. I am dressing the tables. I will fuss with the flowers. I will get on the ladder in a heartbeat. And I was staying at just right next door to the site. And rather than wait on the production team to get there that morning and start troubleshooting, like, I went down to the barn and I got a shop vac. And like, I was with my little two hands, trudging. I trudged a couple 100 gallons of water away from the tent site so the carpet could go down. So like, I mean, really the hurdles I articulate to my clients, by the time you get to a month out, man, things should be buttoned up. Orders have been placed, double checked. Everything your I's should be dotted, your T's should be crossed. But like, when it gets to the time of producing a wedding, and a smart producer, you just have to give yourself the grace and the time on those few days or those few weeks to troubleshoot. So I was just gonna, I got up early that morning and moved some water around, and knock on wood, it's always just weather for me.
Well, and I admire how, you got down and did this, and as opposed to assigning someone else. Like, I remember the very first, like, super ultra luxe wedding I did. I'll never forget when I walked in, the planner designer who I was working with was on the ground, on his knees, stapling something. And I remember thinking, he's doing that, and I get it. I admire it. And I, incorporate that. I'm no longer performing at weddings like I used to in my top band, but when I did, I mean, if the planner, if chairs were in the way or something like that, or they, needed to speed things up, I mean, I would get out there and help out and do anything I could. And I learned that from that experience. Also, you are the publisher and editor-in-chief of the magazine Alabama Weddings. Isn't that right? That's
correct. Yes.
And I'm a little confused because aren't you based in Atlanta?
So my entire life, I've grown up back and forth between Birmingham and Atlanta. And I am week to week between the two. I have a small sort of mother-in-law suite place where I reside when I'm in Atlanta, but my sort of permanent residence, when I purchased the magazine in 2020, I set up sort of full-time shop back in Birmingham. But honestly, Andy, none of my clients, knock on wood, I mean, I have some here, but I'm wherever my clients are. Birmingham is just where my mom is, my sister is, family, my best friends. So Birmingham is home, and it's easier to publish an Alabama Weddings product when you are in Alabama.
I don't know any other planner designer who is also editor-in-chief of a magazine. How are you balancing? How are you doing that?
I will say it's harder than I thought. I was the first. I mean, really, like I said, I did freelance graphic design for the publication as soon as I graduated from Auburn in 2000. It would have been 2008, would have been the first full year. And I really stayed on with them as like sort of style editor, freelance graphic design for almost 10 years, 9 years until 2000. I moved away to Atlanta full time in 2017. And I stepped away fully from the magazine. So I knew that all the ins and outs. I planned all the large features, was on site styling them. And when you're just doing that part of it, you're blocking off 3 or 4 days for pulls and 3 or 4 days for the shoot. So you sort of integrate it like any other project. But when I bought the magazine outright, and as I'm publisher, editor in chief, printing the magazine, working with 50 plus advertisers all year, like it is, I'm very thankful. I have a office manager and a full-time senior editor, art director, that I really could not do this without them. But I find it odd I'm 38 now to say anything is my legacy project, but like I won't do this forever. And although I loved even the years that I worked on the magazine under the former publisher, it wasn't always, listen, there was never a same-sex wedding. It was everything, I would say it was everything you thought Alabama weddings might be, right? Still beautifully done, but sweet and Southern. So in our mission statement, a part of it is I want to showcase love in all of its fullness and forms: faith, same-sex, body image, like size. You can pick up our magazine and see anyone's love story on its pages. In 3 months, we gave it a complete overhaul, rebrand, print, the magazine itself, digital, social, every platform had a full rebrand. And man, I came out swinging. Locally, it sits on stands right by Harper's Bazaar in the women's interest. And I am ever proud. I'm ever proud of the content we put out, because I invest a lot of money and time and care into our local market, kind of being the best it can be. A rising tide raises all ships, right? So yeah, I come in and I've really worked hard. I'm glad you asked about that.
Yeah, I get it. That's well, just a couple more questions, Christopher. What do you still struggle with, though? Related to your career. Well, I guess it could be personal, but as related to the business, it's interesting. I ask this because I like to ask people this question. I like to get into the tough part as well. And it's interesting. I was listening to this podcast this morning of a major star musician who was interviewing another really well-known one. And they were talking about exactly this. Like, I think even though I'm in music, I tend to think, well, they've made it. They've reached the pinnacle. What an incredible life. And they were talking about the hard parts. And I was like, wow, it just reminds me. I mean, like, what do you still struggle with? What's the hard part of all of this?
Well, I'm so thankful that I started in the engaged circuit when I was like 22, 23. So those first like 7-8 years that I went, everyone was still kind of figuring out how that network and those social connections flowed. So like David Beam is one of my best friends, mentor. We travel. We're together as often as we can be. So I have people like David or Colin or Ed Libby that truly I can just call and be like, y'all, what would you do right now? When I was up to buy the magazine, I called Angela with Wedlux and Destination I Do. I've been so lucky that any of the problems that I face, I have formed real relationships with people over the past 15 years that I can call and pull their ear, ask them, what would you do? I'm a great leader, but I don't think I'm a great boss. I can command a room. I have a great presence. But man, when it comes to like the office, managing the daily operations, I don't have that side of the brain. I can run a team of 100 on site and keep them going and make sure the creative is going. So learning to outsource, you surround yourself with people smarter than you, right? So learning to outsource the books. I didn't grow up with money. I grew up super poor. And when you just don't know how to speak that language, me outsourcing someone to do the books, and always having a really good CPA having a business manager to take that weight off my shoulders. That for me solved a lot of problems. Like I have a lead planner that I work with, that lets me do all of my creative, and she handles details and such. So like, it's just the left brain, right brain fight that I'm so envious when I have colleagues who are able to do both, because my brain truly, like, it just doesn't function that way. But I've been smart enough to outsource.
Yeah, I get it. You're making me think. I mean, I'm decent at business, but I'm same thing. I'm much more on the creative side, and I don't enjoy much of the business side. And I got a business partner. I mean, this is after 2 decades. I took on a business partner who's brilliant with the business side of it. And, that's how I dealt with it. But of course, there's still things that overlap and I have to deal with.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like your business partner ramped your business up? Do you feel like taking on that and allowing you to do the creative really set you up?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been, happy with my career and successful and all that. But yeah, I do feel like it's gone to another level. And in some ways, that other level is not just necessarily more work, but also for me to just not have to work to the level I used to, and have it feel like a grind, which is what it used to feel like.
One of your podcasts, I believe you were saying that, I mean, you truly travel. Like, you'll go a month to.
Yes, you've heard.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, like, yeah. Oh, I listen to them all. Like, but that story you just told, and knowing how you probably having a business partner allowed you to just structure your process differently. Like that's very inspiring.
Yeah. Thanks. No, that's true. Travel's real important to me, but also it's not even just getting away from the business, but it's getting another perspective, and it's so inspiring. I mean, the last time, I like to take these month-long trips. I've done maybe 5 of them in my life, and I hadn't done it partly because of COVID and also ramping up and getting a business partner and all that. I hadn't had that length of a vacation in something like 4 or 5 years. And I had one last winter for the first time in that long. And I was so inspired and happy. I mean, for months. And I just planned another one for next January. So I'm going to try, if I can, to keep this up. And I know I'm fortunate to be able to do it, but I also, I set it up by getting a business partner, and he takes off and I cover for him. And when I'm gone, he covers for me, although I'm available for real important things. But sure. But it's the inspiration, it's the excitement, and just reconnecting. I talk a lot. You've heard this too in the podcast about reconnecting with nature. I believe that the more we can connect with nature, there's some way that's hard to explain that we are connecting with ourselves when we're connecting with nature.
Time for me, thinking like the inspiration and travel, time is the only valuable currency we have. Or for me, that's what I feel. Stuff I can get back. And earlier this year, I was fortunate enough to spend almost a month in Europe. I traveled to Paris for a design show. It was David, Michelle, Rishi there. It's just the design show everyone goes to. But I tacked on at the end. I went to Hamburg, Berlin, Prague, Vienna, Budapest, and Istanbul.
Oh, sounds awesome.
I encountered more art and culture, same as you. I hadn't traveled in several years, and Andy, just more art and culture than ever before. But I came away with the realization that, like, time is fleeting. I'll be 40 next year, and touring those castles, it's like, men who once ruled the world with just vast amounts of wealth. They are just laying in a small box in the basement in the crypt.
That's right.
I really define success for me is just leaving a legacy, and I define legacy by loving the person that I'm in front of. That even our podcast today, if someone listens and they take one little blurb from you or me, that intrinsically our lives will be different in some way after this conversation today. That I want to be present and share kindness with people and love on people. Get outside, put my feet, whether it's a beach or in the woods or on a hike. Like, spending time in nature, oh, you're so right. Like, it is just the biggest inspiration. Like a color palette, I'm sitting here looking out the window now, and like I could design any party just by the color gradient that I see from the trees to the sky.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, geez, Christopher, this has been great. And I appreciate you opening up about the difficult part, especially. And just, thank you for your time doing this. I really enjoyed it.
Andy, it's been a treat. I've listened to the podcast for so long. You've had so many of my friends and colleagues on, and it's been, really even great to get to know them more through your podcast.
Oh, cool.
So thank you for taking the time with me today and all that you do for the wedding industry.
Yeah, thanks. You're very welcome. Thanks for saying that. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Christopher Confero. You can find his websites at confero.co. That is confero.co, and also alabamaweddings.com. And you can find him on Instagram at Christopher Confero and at just Confero. And also be sure to check out the show notes with event pics that Christopher provided in your cell phone's podcast app or on our website at theweddingbiz.com. And I want to mention or remind you that Preston Bailey has been on our show numerous times, and he had a show which is called Stop and Smell the Roses. You can find it on theweddingbiznetwork.com. And also Sean Lowe, A Business of Being Creative. Again, both Preston and Sean's shows are at theweddingbiznetwork.com or by their show name on your cell phone's podcast app. I also want to mention next week's guest, and that is Nora Shields, co-founder of Rock Paper Coin, to talk about the role of automation and how it can help us in the event and wedding industry. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Zola. Remember to go to zola.com/Andy to create your free listing and get your first few connections for free. And we'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.